Hey guys, Mono here, the host of Tokyo Game Life, a video game podcast about Nintendo and gaming culture in Japan. Switch 2 Direct, just a few days away, so I wanted to make a little bonus video about what I think is going to be there. Now, this is going to be either 100% correct or 100% wrong. I'm not going 50-50 here, so strap in. Let's talk about the format for a bit. For one, I think this thing has got to be an hour. A typical 40-minute direct is possible if they plan on doing a summer direct highlighting their holiday titles, but I do think Nintendo has more than enough to talk about to make this hit the 1 hour mark. Games, hardware, demo events, they won't have any trouble hitting 60 minutes. Now, does Nintendo show off the date and price first? I think a lot of people are expecting or hoping the price is $400, so if it's a single cent, a single yen more than that, people might be disappointed. But I am leaning towards the date being the very first piece of new info they show off, and then they save the price for the very end in one of the final title cards. As for what those will be, let's say June 26, $450 US. I do think the Japanese price won't be equivalent to $1 equals 100 yen, so I'm thinking 48,000 yen for Japan. This is maybe a pessimistic guess since I've seen a lot of people speculate it's coming in May for $400, but hey, if I'm wrong, at least I will be happy about it. I don't think a $450 price is a deal breaker, especially if Nintendo shows off they have a killer one-year lineup. Remember when people freaked out that the Switch was $300 instead of $250? It turned out alright. Now, we know the basics of the hardware, but I think there will be 4 key points they highlight. The mouse functionality of the Joy-Cons, the DLSS technology, the elusive C button, and the top USB-C slot. The new mouse cons, I think that's what Nintendo is going to lean into the hardest. I'm really curious to see how they pitch this because I'm still a bit in the dark about how this is actually going to work. Like, do we always need to play in front of a table? Am I supposed to rub it on my leg? But having mouse controls on a console is a very novel idea, and showing off some sort of dual mouse configuration? That's definitely never been done before in the console space. I think Nintendo is going to utilize this in mini games right off the bat, and it might lead into some PC games jumping to consoles for the very first time as well. I do think this is going to be a much bigger deal than people realize, but it is hard to imagine what will be the best usage for it. Thankfully, Nintendo is much smarter than I am, and they will figure it out. Next up is DLSS, Deep Learning Super Sampling, which is NVIDIA's upscaling technology that helps games look and run better. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a tech expert, but the gist is that it helps improve resolution and frame rate without solely relying on the rendering power of the hardware. So for example, a game outputs at 720p and 30 frames per second, but using DLSS, it can jump up to 1080p and 60 frames by using machine learning to fill in the gaps. PS5 Pro has a version of this called PSSR, but Nvidia seems leagues ahead of all other competitors, and Switch will be the first handheld device we will see using this tech. If it works as well as many people are hoping, it will narrow the gap between Switch 2 and PS5. Now, my explanation of this was bad, and it is sort of a complex thing to explain, so I imagine Nintendo is not going to say, we have DLSS blah blah blah, but instead, they're going to call this technology something entirely different and give it a very Nintendo-esque name, like Power Up, or maybe even Nintendo Power if they're feeling sassy. If you do a side-by-side comparison and say, hey, this is before Power Up, and this is after Power Up, I think people will understand without getting into the nitty-gritty about what AI upscaling actually is. Now, the C button. In the first Switch 2 video, this was just a blank button. We now know that it will have a C on it thanks to leaks and also the Nintendo Today app. Nintendo purposefully hid this for some reason. Maybe because if we had 3 months to think about what a C could stand for, somebody would figure it out. And yeah, thanks to leaks, we've had 3 months, and the C may stand for Campus, which is allegedly online group chat functionality, which also includes screen sharing. This was data mined from the Switch OS, and to me, this is the most likely answer. I'm not sure if Campus will be the actual name for this function though, or if it will just be C for chat, or maybe it will be purposefully ambiguous, kind of like how DS technically doesn't stand for anything. But this button will be dedicated to party chat and maybe some other online party options. Last piece of tech I think they will focus on is the top USB-C slot. It was kind of weird to feature it so heavily in the Switch 2 reveal video, and people say that, yeah, they should have had a top USB-C slot there in the first place, so this is something that everybody wants. But I do think that it's likely that Nintendo will utilize this top slot in some way, like having additional peripherals that plug into the top. Maybe a camera, maybe something similar to Amiibo where it unlocks content in the games, but Nintendo will show off something unorthodox that you can pop in there. Okay, hardware is out of the way, so let's talk games. And the first game we're going to see, it's obviously Mario Kart hitting day one. It's going to be heavily inspired by Forza Horizon and Burnout Paradise, where there is an open world element that you can explore and start impromptu races. I don't think it will abandon the typical cup-style races though, and there will still be some way to instantly jump into an online race from a menu for people who just want to do that. But this new, quote, world of Mario Kart will be a major focus. I can also see a heavier focus on customization, both for the karts and the racers. My Mario won't look like your Mario. I'll be rocking the samurai helmet from Odyssey, you'll have a Mauser hat on or something. I don't think they will go full Nintendo Kart, but I do see Kirby showing up as a racer. Please just add Kirby. You can take Link out, that's fine, but just add Kirby instead. This isn't the only brand new Nintendo game coming at launch though. Since the mouse functionality of the Joy-Cons is going to be a major new feature, Nintendo is going to release a game focusing mostly on this. I think it will be a very casual focused game like a minigame collection, possibly at a reduced price. And it will be called something cute like Tails, or it will have mouse in the name with an overall mousy aesthetic. I'm trying to think about who at Nintendo could be working on this game. EPD4, who typically handles these types of experimental games like Labo and Ring Fit, they seem to be working on the playtest title, so they might have their hands busy. EPD9, which handles Mario Kart, maybe this could be another smaller project from that team? They put out Mario Kart 8 DX and ARMS soon after launch for the Switch 1, so maybe we will see a repeat here. But if the mouse game is being handled by a non-EPD team, Nintendo Cube, who works on Mario Party, seems like the safest bet. But that is a big question for a lot of Nintendo fans. What are Nintendo's internal teams, EPD, what are they working on? The last retail release from an EPD team? It was Super Mario Bros. Wonder all the way back in October of 2023, but EPD5 did work on Splatoon 3's DLC Side Order just last year. But all other 2024 and so far 2025 Nintendo published titles were developed by teams outside of Nintendo. So it's safe to say that it has been all hands on deck for Switch 2 for a few years now. I think Mario Kart and the mouse game are day one for sure, but I think we will see some other EPD published games in this direct, spanning all the way into 2026. And yes, we will finally see a new 3D Mario from EPD8. I've seen a lot of people speculate it will be some sort of combo Mario and DK game, since there has been a lot of rumors about EPD working on a Donkey Kong title, something we have yet to see. So is it possible they've merged a 3D Mario in with a new Donkey Kong title? A 3D platformer starring both Mario and Donkey Kong? I'm not sure if that would elevate DK or cheapen the brand, but whether or not Mario teams up with DK in his next adventure, we are absolutely going to see Mario running around in 3D in this direct, and it'll be in our hands this holiday season. Animal Crossing from EPD5 will at least be teased here with a release within the Switch 2's first year. I do think they want to get a Splatoon game out on Switch 2 ASAP, but I think it's been all hands on deck for Animal Crossing for a while now. I think we're moving away from the island theme and focusing more on world customization. You'll have way more terraforming tools and options to make your town seem like its own biome. Like you can have a desert town, or a mountain town. Space town? Can I live in space? I hope so. EPD10, do they have a new Pikmin game to show off? Both Pikmin and 2D Mario just came out, so it's hard to imagine they have something in the chamber, so they might be sitting out this direct. EPD7 may be working on the newest Rhythm Heaven and Tomodachi Life titles that were announced in the last direct, so I think we can rule them out for now. Now, what will be the big EPD title they save as the one last thing? A brand new 3D Zelda title. A 2026 release date? That seems unlikely, but ending on an undated Zelda trailer would be a killer way to end the direct and get people hyped about what's to come. I think this will be the one, hey, this is pretty far away, but we still want to show it off type of game at the direct. And it'll be a completely new vision for Zelda. Link won't look like the Breath of the Wild Link. You'll see him and think, whoa, that's different. I'm going to go with Samurai Link. I think we'll have an even stronger Japanese aesthetic as opposed to the fairy tale fantasy vibe, though the Switch Zeldas did have a lot of Japanese influence with the Jomon-inspired Sheikah architecture and the Zonai's Zen Garden-inspired shrines. But I say the Japanese influence goes even further in the next Zelda title. As for non-EPD teams, Next Level Games hasn't put out anything since Mario Strikers in 2022, and you've got to think that Luigi's Mansion 4 is coming along, especially with the rumors that it's getting a ride at Universal. And I think that will also be the setting, a haunted theme park. You will fight a giant ghost roller coaster. I can imagine this being a very Mario-heavy direct, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see a new Mario Kart, 3D Mario, and Luigi's Mansion, and they all come out within a 365-day span. Retro, is this going to be the game that Nintendo shows off to highlight Switch 2 enhancements for Switch 1 titles? I kind of think Breath of the Wild is more likely, but many people are convinced that this is going to be a cross-gen launch title for Switch 2, but I honestly don't think so. It's not a system mover like Zelda or Mario Kart, and they've already had 2 direct segments where it was heavily emphasized that it will be a Switch 1 game. I do think showing it off in the last direct and still having no release date is kind of strange, so I will put its chances at being a Switch 2 launch title at above 0, but I still don't think it will happen. It is weird that it has box art already though. Typically, games without a date don't have box art revealed. Monolith Soft, I do think they are working on the successor to Xenoblade, either another Xeno series or maybe something with a totally new name, but I don't think we will see it here. NST, they put out the Mario vs. DK remake. Maybe they are working on the mouse game? If I say that every company is working on the mouse game, I will eventually be right. Nintendo bought Shiver last year, but I don't see them as the lead on any notable Switch 2 projects right now. Game Freak? I mean, going back to DLSS, if they show off Scarlet and Violet and say, hey, it runs well now, that would be big enough news, I think. But I don't see a focus on them here. HAL? Kirby? It's been over 2 years since the Kirby title, which is a long time for them. If they don't have some random remake on Switch 1 this year, they must be working on a Switch 2 title. Similar to HAL, Intelligent Systems has nothing for Switch 1 this year, yet they pretty much average 1 release per year. Fire Emblem 4 has been rumored for years, but in general, I don't think remakes are appealing titles for new hardware. Camelot, I think it's time to bring back Mario Baseball. The sport is more popular than ever, especially here in Japan, and I think they will add an MLB All-Stars team in the game led by Shohei Ohtani. Grezzo, too soon after Echoes of Wisdom, and beyond these companies, Nintendo now has a wide array of collaborators who put out games on the Switch. Companies like Acquire, Arika, Mercury Steam, Goodfeel, and so forth. I mean, if I could pick anything, I would want Arte Piazza to make a brand new Super Mario RPG game. The remake was incredible and I want more, and I think it crushed sales expectations. Now, you can't show off everything in this one direct, and I do think Nintendo will have another Switch 2 direct later in the year to focus on holiday titles, so if I had to pick my 100% locks for EPD titles, Mario Kart, 3D Mario, Animal Crossing, and Zelda will have trailers. Lock it in. Third-party titles, there will be some things I believe will hit 2025, like Elden Ring and the new Night Rain game. It would be kind of funny to launch both on the same day. I'm sure there are still many people who have played Elden Ring elsewhere, but would be interested in getting Night Rain on the Switch too. And by people, I mean me. Now, if you look at the other big Japanese publishers, I think all of them are getting some notable titles on Switch 2 within the first year. Capcom, Street Fighter 6 for sure. I also think Resident Evil titles will start to make their way over too. Namco, the aforementioned Elden Ring, and also the newest Dragon Ball Z fighting game. Sega, Persona 3 Reload, and Metaphor will hit Switch 2 for sure. Square, honestly, I think it's time to show off Dragon Quest XII or say, hey, it's coming to Switch 2. Koei Tecmo, I wouldn't be surprised if something absurd like Xenoblade Warriors shows up for year 1. I feel like that game has to come out eventually, so everyone get ready. Konami, is Metal Gear Solid 3 coming to Switch here? Possibly, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a late port. Another big third party, although not Japanese, is, hey, Microsoft. The latest Forza Horizon title and Halo Master Chief Collection are hitting this year or early next year. Now, I'm a little worried I'm maybe listing too many games to fit into one direct, but I do imagine that all the games I talked about will at least be released on Switch 2 within a year, even if it's not present in the direct. Though maybe we are on the cusp of witnessing the greatest sizzle reel the world has ever seen. Last big thing, we're going to see some notable changes to Nintendo Switch Online. We've seen the gold points go away. We now know that the voucher system will only work on Switch 1 titles, so Nintendo is going to introduce a replacement or new feature specifically for Nintendo Switch 2's NSO. What's funny is that here in Japan, if you buy an item at a Nintendo store, like a physical Nintendo store, you get gold coins off of real-life purchases. And they push this pretty hard in the stores, so for it to go away completely is pretty odd. I think they will introduce something similar, but perhaps not as cost-saving. And I do think a Switch 2 specific voucher system is coming, though maybe not at launch. The base price for Switch 2 titles is absolutely going to jump up to $70, so the current voucher system, where you pay $100 for 2 games, is just too good. And I predict a major new feature of NSO is enhanced versions of Switch 1 titles. Nintendo in some copy did use the phrase, quote, Switch 2 edition games, so that might be the terminology they've settled on. We've seen this with PlayStation, where they offer PS5 enhanced versions of PS4 games at an additional price, and I can see Nintendo doing something similar, like having a 4K 60 FPS version of Breath of the Wild, for example. And I think Nintendo will have two options: paying for an upgrade, or the upgrade will be included for free on NSO. Similar to how some DLC is free if you have NSO, subscribers will automatically get these enhanced versions of old games. Nintendo has been expanding the functionality and rewards for having NSO. We've seen Nintendo Music recently, for example. And to me, this just makes perfect sense. It gives Nintendo some news items to drop during slower times. Like, oh, Nintendo's big news for this week is that Pikmin 4 is now in 4K, or whatever. This could also help make NSO appealing to those who don't care about retro games or online titles. About 1 in 5 Switch users also have NSO, and that's a huge potential moneymaker for Nintendo, so I can see them pushing it even harder in the Switch 2 era. Alright, so those are some of my predictions. Again, going for 100% or 0%. Now, if you like the sound of my voice, you can hear more of me on my podcast, Tokyo Game Life, right here on YouTube or on all podcast apps. I talk to amazing guests, all smarter than I am, about cool gaming places to visit in Tokyo, unique Japanese games, and under-the-radar elements of Japanese gaming culture. Find it on your podcast app or click the playlist that probably popped up by now. See you next time. Mata ne!